difference.
Chop chop. And here goes, I represent for 99.1 Kaicho Radio, the radio with a difference.
Kaicho Radio.
Covering Guyana from coast to coast.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Berbice 99.5 FM. Kaicho Radio. Kaicho Radio, keeping you informed.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Berbice 99.5 FM. Kaicho Radio.
Beaming across the counties of Essequibo, Demerara, and Berbice, this is Kaicho Radio, 99.1 and 99.5 FM. Kaicho Radio, the radio with a difference.
It is 19 hours 30 all across Guyana, and you are listening to Kaicho Radio, the radio with a difference. And it is time to enter room 592 with Dr. Yog Mahadeo alongside his co-host, senior journalist of Kaicho News. Before we get started, let me remind you all that you can catch us on Facebook at Kaicho Radio and at www.kaichonewsonline.com/radio/ and also feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, once again, Kaicho Radio. So in the meantime, let's get started. Good evening, gentlemen.
Okay.
It is 19 hours 30 in Guyana, and it is time to enter room 592 with Dr. Yog Mahadeo alongside senior journalist of Kaicho News, Leonard Gildarie. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Good evening to you, sir. How are you tonight, Mr. Kevin Smith?
I am chilly.
All right. Well, that means you are not in the best place because the rest of Guyana feeling warm and nice. D-Day. D-Day is here. D-Day that Guyana has been waiting 105 plus days for. Ladies and gentlemen, all across Guyana, Caribbean, the diaspora in the U.S., United States, Canada, UK, wherever you're joining us from, welcome to room 592, where we unleash the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have some big topics to discuss. We want to talk a little bit about the recent happenings, what has happened, what has the President just said over the past day or so. What are the consequences of the statements he made? In addition, we want to look at the blistering report that has been issued today from the observers, the CARICOM observer team. We dealt with it during our elections watch in a brief way today with Leonard Gildarie. And so tonight we want to get a little bit more in detail with regards to the content of the CARICOM Observer Team report. And joining us tonight, of course, are the heads of the two other observer teams within the Artichoke Convention Center. One is Mr. Capt.Gerry Gouveia, who headed the Private Sector Commission's observer team over these past 35 odd days in the Recount Center, and the other being the president of the American Chamber of Commerce Guyana, Mr. Zulfikar Ali, who headed that observer team during these recount. Captain and Zulfikar Ali, sirs, welcome to room 592.
Thank you very much, Yog.
And let me also say welcome to my co-host, Mr. Leonard Gildarie. Mr. Gildarie, today was very interesting in Elections Watch, wasn't it, sir?
Very long. I think it was about 2.5 hours, but it was a lot of people. There's a lot of concerns over what is happening in Guyana. And of course, people want to get it over with and done. And so you see, this is the first election that I've seen so many people, so many stakeholders coming to the front. And that is a very telling thing. So as we go forward, we could say that there's a populace out there that's becoming very much aware. So the next presidency that comes into place, that person should be very much aware that the people are a little more brighter now. They're a little more intelligent. They have access to internet, and so they're getting on to their families abroad. They're talking, and so they're able to make more informed choices. And of course, I want to say welcome to Mr. Zulfikar Ali and Capt.Gerry Gouveia.
Thank you. And just before I go over to our two guests for tonight, and ladies and gentlemen, we expect Mr. Sanjeev Datidin to be joining us at some stage. We do know that he has a little bit of a challenge with his communications. As you know, not everybody has been able to be well favored at all times with their communication. So I just spoke to him. He has a little problem logging in, signing on to the program, but let's hope that gets resolved. To Mr. Gouveia and Mr. Ali. Gentlemen, tonight we wanted a two-phase discussion. One is, of course, the CARICOM report, as well as the reports of the American Chamber of Commerce at Guyana and the report of the Private Sector Commission of Guyana. But before we get to that, Captain, and before we get to that, Mr. Ali, Leonard, I want to just have this discussion with our viewers and listeners. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a notion that we have expressed last night and we wish to repeat tonight. Mr. Lowenfield has presented a report to the commission in which he has said that his polling officers, his deputy officers, his polling clerks, whatever you call them, whatever titles they have, Mr. Lowenfield has said that he and his officers did a bad job. If we are to believe Lowenfield, if we are to believe Mr. Lowenfield's report, then it means that the teachers, the headmistresses, the headmasters, the public servants, the people who were employed in the various polling booths, it means they committed fraud. And so one of the things we wanted to contemplate tonight was, is there any consequence to electoral fraud? If one were to believe Mr. Lowenfield, mind you, there is a big if there. The other thing that you have to look at, President David Granger yesterday, during his statement, and today's, the Guyana Rag, some of you know it as the Guyana Chronicle, I call it the Guyana Rag. The Guyana Rag's front page, full page, has President David Granger accusing 2,339 polling booths of flaking off, meaning that in every booth in this country, 15 to 20 persons voted twice, according to Mr. Granger. Now, if we are to believe Mr. Granger, it means that the people in all of those booths, in all of those polling stations, were part of some mysterious fraud. And therefore, can this country accept that we have been defrauded by all of these teachers and civil servants and whatever they are, whatever designations they have? Or can we ask you, ladies and gentlemen, you teachers, you headmistresses, you workers, civil servants, all of you who have manned these polling stations, who have worked at these polling booths, step out and speak up. Because if you are not part of a fraud, if you were not paid off, if you did not commit wrong, then you need to free your name. I would hate for my child to go to school and look at a school teacher and say, sir, miss, were you part of the fraud? Were you part of GCOM? So ladies and gentlemen, I want to call on all of you who have been part of these elections. Speak up, speak out, clear your name. Elections malpractice, elections fraud has consequences. And if Mr. Datidin is able to join us as soon as he sorts his communication problems out, we will get a little bit into that as to what are the consequences. To my two guests tonight, I don't know if you want to add any comments to our opening there. Mr. Ali, Captain?
Yog, I very strongly and categorically reject any notion that we have had any fraud of the magnitude or any magnitude at all in our polling systems. We have had observers scattered throughout this country visiting polling stations. In every polling station, you had 5 members of GCOM staff. You had party agents from every political party. So you're not only accusing GCOM staff, you're also accusing the APNU staff. You're also accusing the PPP staff. You're accusing all of the other 8 small parties, their agents. And so this is absolutely ludicrous. It's really, really very disappointing that a man of David Granger's caliber would cast that kind of accusation against Guyanese, ordinary Guyanese, because these people who worked in these polling stations are ordinary Guyanese, that they went beyond the call and trying to help Guyana. And to believe that we could have a fraud like that is mind-boggling. And the fact that we spent, I understand the figure was $15 billion to run these elections.
Wow.
Probably including the recount. And for Loing Field, the one single person who was responsible for GCOM, responsible for the employment of every single one of those staff, and the management and administration of the elections before, during, and after. For him to even condone that kind of conversation, it's a serious accusation on himself. I mean, he is basically damaging himself for the rest of his life, and I don't know if he understands that. But it's I reject it outright. And it's a smoke screen, and it is a disgraceful attempt to do that, to call our people criminals, and they were part of a conspiracy to defraud this nation. That is totally rejected by me personally.
Thank you. And you agree with the call, Captain, that if people need to speak out as well. I mean, if the president has thrown everybody under, well, pardon me for saying this, but he's thrown them under the David G. bus. Well, all those of you who have fallen under the bus need to speak out.
Yo, I want you to listen to something. This is the chairperson of GCOM.
Well, as promised, GCOM has delivered free, fair, and friendly elections. And now I will hand over. General and regional elections were free, fair, and orderly.
Our apologies there. I think there's some technical issues there.
You're not hearing it?
Yes, we were hearing it a little bit.
Well,
very
basically,
low.
this is the chairperson of GCOM the very next day after the elections, pronouncing how proud she was of the elections. It was fair and it's free, and it was efficient, and she was very proud. And we also had Basil Williams in his vehicle, telling the reporters how proud he was, and then we had.
We're hearing it a little bit.
Well,
very
basically,
low.
this is.
Yes. Carry on, Captain.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so we've had now when you run an election, the matrix of what happens during that day, it needs to be exact, and so you have cells, and so every ballot box, where a ballot box is part of a polling station. So you could have maybe 3 or 4 ballot boxes in a polling station. Mm-hmm. And every ballot box needs to be treated with a high level of security. So there are party agents looking at it, there's the police, there's the GCOM staff, to ensure that there's no irregularities. And if there's just one hint of irregularity, immediately an alarm is set off at one of those polling stations, at one of those ballot boxes, immediately. And so throughout that day, we had no alarms. We had not one person came forward and say, I've seen this, or I've seen that, or I have a concern about this, I have a concern about that. Not one. And And at the end of the polling that night, all of them participated in the counting of the ballot and the preparation of the SOP. And all of them signed the SOP without any dissenting voices. And now for you to come down here 3 months down the road or however long it is to tell me that we had widespread fraud, that your polling agents who were in that room come and you're accusing them of being corrupted. I mean, that is a serious, serious dilemma for issues of honesty, integrity, and decency.
So
Thank you for that, Captain. And ladies and gentlemen, just before I hand you over for comments from Mr. Ali, who has headed his own observer mission team to the recount, I want to let you know two things. One, when those serial numbers were being called out of somebody who, I don't know if the claim was they died or they migrated, one of those persons was actually Mr. Ali's team. And so he will probably talk more about it. But Mr. Ali, just before I hand over the mic to you, sir, for your comments with regards to the recount and all of that, I just want to share this with our viewers and listeners. The CARICOM Observer team, ladies and gentlemen, have made some profound statements today in which they basically said that the elections were credible, and that a declaration has to be made from these recounts. Listen to me, viewers and listeners. I am quoting. We are, however, of the unshakable belief that the people of Guyana expressed their will at the ballot box, and as a result, the three-person CARICOM Observer team concludes that the national results are completely acceptable. End of quote. Mr. Ali, APNO AFC agents, sir, and I'm sorry to put you on a political spotlight. I know you headed a mission. But we have had one political party already saying that y'all only oversee or observe 18% of the boxes. How can you make a conclusion? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Yog, and good evening to you and Leonard, Captain Gouveia, and all your listeners at home. Thank you for having me on the program. Before I answer that question, Yog, I think it would be remiss of me if I don't enlighten your viewers about the role that AmCham played during this observation process. AmCham Guyana fielded over 60 persons at the general elections on March 2nd. And we fielded persons in Regions 2, Regions 3, Region 4, and Region 5. I could tell you that at the end of that exercise, we have received not one single report of any irregularity from any one of the polling stations that we visited throughout the day, including the counting at that night. We were also in contact with other observer missions, the Private Sector Commission, the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce, the Bar Association, the ambassadors. We were in constant contact and we were sharing information, and we have received absolutely no report during the day or the night of dead persons voting or immigrants voting, or that there were major issues towards the voting process itself. Outside of that, days after the election, weeks after the election, there was absolutely no report that came to us, either by the citizens of Guyana, elections day staff, or any political party or observers, that said to us that there were irregularities on the actual day of voting. So we actually went through that day and couple of weeks after without any claim of any irregularity. And I think that is important to note. And we are of the strong belief that from what we have observed and what our observers have reported from their observation in the field, There were absolutely no irregularity. GCOM did a very commendable job. The polling day staff, they were very professional. As a matter of fact, even at the polling station where I voted, I was very impressed with the way that the staff conducted themselves and the way that the process was going through. So we're very satisfied with GCOM and the work that they have done on polling day. And we must commend them, I must say. And I do agree with Captain Gouveia, and I do agree with the observation of the CARICOM report and all of the other observers who have said that the election process on election day was credible, it was free, it was fair, and it was transparent. And that's our observation as well.
Thank you. Mr. Ali and Captain, I want to read to you a part of this report. It goes as follows. This is the CARICOM Observer Team report saying, on more than one occasion, the team leader had to request of the Secretariat that copies of any changes to procedure be provided to the team, as this would have an impact on the team's assessment of the process. This simple request was met with some resentment, and it was clear to the team that there was some unexplained underlying hostility directed at the CARICOM team. Captain.
I read that today, and I was shocked that anybody in GCOM could treat guests to our country, especially guests that has been invited by the head of state to come and help us validate, because that's his words, to validate what was going on. And I'm shocked to hear that. And I spent the private sector, manned every single station, every single day, throughout from 7:30 in the morning to 7:30 at night, every day. And we were there, we saw the CARICOM observers. They were moving from station to station. They were looking, they were observing, they were taking notes. And they were always very, very quiet and diligent in what they do. And I was shocked and disappointed to hear that anybody could be so discourteous or emanate such hostility to guests in our country.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ali, I want to read the next part and ask you if you share this experience. I quote, the level of aggression displayed by some agents in the recount workstation leaves much to be desired. Indeed, the conduct displayed by some of the observed party agents at New AFC was totally unacceptable. It did not only cheapen the dignity of the recount exercise, but it contributed immensely to the atmosphere of intimidation experienced by some of the GCOM staff. The district supervisors had to be summoned to quell some untenable situations.
Yes, Yog, we in our observation, we have also taken note of that. And I think those who were following the broadcast that were live on Facebook from the GCOM Facebook page would have also observed some of the disruptions that took place within the centers itself. Now, we know we're in a politically charged environment, and we know people are very passionate about their politics. But it was very disappointing to see the level of disruption that took place by some party agents. And they were very, as the CARICOM observers pointed out, they were very hostile to the GCOM staff when the GCOM staff were not doing what they wanted them to do. And it was very sad because everybody went in there knowing exactly what is it that has to be done and what process to follow. So we were very disappointed as well, and I could tell you that if outside of that, the GCOM staff still conducted themselves in a professional manner, and we must commend them for that. The observers themselves, we've witnessed this in almost every single station that we were in. So it was disappointing. It was very disappointing to see that. And I think at that level, our political leaders need to speak to their party agents. So, have some level of respect especially when the world is watching you and the world is watching your actions and how you behave. We should not let this happen again. It was very sad to see that, but we're just observers and we're there to observe. Our job was not to tell anyone what they should do and shouldn't do at that time.
Thank you. And let's come back to the percentages, because a lot of our viewers and listeners are very interested in the percentages. Now, some of the political agents are saying, well, you only looked at 18% as an average. Mind you, viewers and listeners, that's an average. In some cases, they went to 23% of observation. So that 18 is an average over all of the accounts. But Mr. Ali, when APNU AFC were calling out, so for example, in box number 6121, they just reeled out 137 serial numbers, of which 5% had an unverified tick. In other words, viewers and listeners, when the GCOM person is saying ticked or unticked, these observers were not able to verify whether it was ticked or unticked. So at this stage, those are unverified ticks. But mind you, the same people who are talking 18% can't work, you're talking about 5% that was ticked. And they want you to accept that an election is totally flawed with a 5% margin. And these are allegations, mind you. These are just allegations. Over to you, sir, on these percentages.
Well, Yog, AmCham Guyana, we were not given the opportunity at the recount stage to observe all the station. GCOM asked us to collaborate with all of the other local observers to work together, and they were only allowing one observer, local observer, per room. Same thing with the foreign observers, and well, CARICOM had 3 observers there. But I could tell you this, Yog, with regards to the percentages, whether you want to say that CARICOM observed 18% of the boxes, and AmCham Guyana observed 10%, and Private Sector Commission observed 20%, and the Bar Association and others observed the rest. Combined together, we all share the same view that CARICOM did. So even if CARICOM were not in the rooms that AmCham observers were in, we still share the same views, the same observations, and the recommendations that CARICOM did. So when you add it in its entirety, it's 100%, we are all in 100% agreement with what was stated in the CARICOM report.
But you mentioned something very important there, and Captain, I want to take this to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, while CARICOM would have said that the average number of observation they have done was 18%, please remember, where they were, AmCham wasn't. Where these people were, private sector weren't. In other words, between all the observers, they were spread. Am I right or wrong, Mr. Gouveia?
That's perfectly correct. And the people who are making this claim are obviously making it from a position of ignorance. And ignorance, and I mean that in the sense of lack of knowledge. There's no elections in this world that is where observers are able to do 100%. And so you do spot checks across regions. And so if we have 2,339 polling stations, if observers hit 20% of those stations, they would, and that is anywhere in the world. And so you see the pattern, and you also will deal with reports of irregularities. And so the fact that they covered 18% of the vote of the boxes, and they were in one building, is remarkable. So for people who can make that and try to make it into some kind of deficiency, it is because they do not understand elections observance. And throughout the world, there's no way an election could be 100% observed. But it is in a sense, because while you may not have international observers or local observers, you have the party agents who are there as well. So it is all about the protection of the integrity of the system, and then the observers are there to watch the process. And the process is exactly the same way it is at every single polling station. So you get a sampling of it across the country, and the observers turn up unannounced. And so that is what the CARICOM team was doing. They were moving from station to station unannounced, and so they were able to see exactly what was happening.
Correct. So they literally had 100% view, depending on their statistical sampling of where they're going to be at what time, right?
That's exactly the term, statistical sampling.
So
that's exactly what it is.
So here is another thought. Ladies and gentlemen, please remember, it is the government of Guyana, not GCOM, that prohibited other international observers from being here. It is the president who said that CARICOM is the authorized, is the approved, is the only legitimate interlocutor to the process. So one would find it hard that the government or APNU AFC will now want to extricate or divorce themselves from this report. What's your thought on that, both Gerry and Zulfi?
Well, you know, this is becoming a real masquerade and a real charade, because every single person who have championed the cause of the rule of law, of compliance with the Constitution, of democracy, have come under blistering personal attacks from people who are anti-democratic opponents. And so every single person. So you saw Prime Minister Oyenata, you saw Prime Minister Golan, you saw Prime Minister Sir James Mitchell, you saw Prime Minister Ralph Gonzalez, and the list goes on, and you saw them curse the OAS, and you saw them, I mean, and they go on, and they curse the head of the Commonwealth, then they curse the US ambassador, and then they curse the British High Commission, and they went after every single person who is saying Guyana need to be a place where the rule of law and democracy is paramount. And the US ambassador said it, that democracy is an exclusive club. And if you want to be part of that exclusive club, there's some particular conditionalities that you need to meet. But every time you have people who stand up for the rule of law and democracy, they come under these blistering attacks. And you know, today when I saw the CARICOM report came out, I said to my executive in the private sector, I said, let's give them 1 hour. Let's give them 1 hour, and you will see the onslaught that will start from CARICOM. Mm-hmm. And so said, so done. And very shortly, you're going to see the chairperson of CARICOM that will have to come out and make a public statement on this issue. And you will hear the blistering attacks. And what people are not understanding, Yoga, or maybe it's missing them, is that they have to live to fight another day. You know, you can't destroy all of your credibility, all your honesty, and all your integrity. This is a suicide mission. This is like do or die. And in my own view, I would like to humbly say to the people who are fighting this thing, you know, regroup, rebrand, re-strategize, and prepare yourself for the next elections.
Thank you.
It's very clear. It's very clear. Mm-hmm. What they're doing is completely day after day destroying their image and their credibility, and then they wonder why they will be beaten at the elections. They mm-hmm. wonder why people will turn away from them, because the last elections were not about race. The last elections was about issues, and in fact, it was about integrity, and it was about decency, and it was about honesty. And I mean, I want to tell you, I spent a lot of years in the Army as a young officer, and I admired David Granger when he was in the Army. And he really did project the image of honesty and so on. But what I saw in the last 2 months or 3 months with these elections, when I saw particularly his address yesterday to the media, and the fact that President Granger could have sat there and refused to acknowledge that the reason for this recount was not some kind of unknown entity. The reason for this recount was because Mingo was attempting to steal the elections for his party. And the president, he sat there and he beat around the bush. And I was disappointed because he was supposed to be the person that stood at the platform of honesty and decency and integrity. And he refused to acknowledge what happened there on March 3rd and 4th.
Thank you. So I want to come back two very important things. Mr. Ali, you mentioned earlier, and indeed the CARICOM report praises the attitude and the hard work of the CARICOM team, but not necessarily their speed and their expertise. It was a distinctive definition in the CARICOM report. But, Mr. Ali, talking about those ticks specifically, and to explain to viewers and listeners, to remind you, when we talk about these ticks, what we mean. So APNU AFC's agent would stand up and they would say, I want to call out 137 serial numbers, and you need to tell me whether they're ticked, that is, whether they voted or not. And so CARICOM observer team has said the following. The allegations were GCOM was complicit. Repeat, GCOM was complicit in the objections raised by APNU AFC agents as the information on the serial numbers were provided by the workstation staff on which APNU AFC based their objections. How can you then say, Mr. Ali, that the staff are praiseworthy and they work hard and they did well, yet in this case, as one of the examples, they were complicit?
Well, you have to realize that the staff were following instructions as well, and they're not the ones who made those decisions. I could tell you that we all entered this and we were all under the impression that we were doing a recount of the ballots. A recount of the ballots and also following that process through the order, which is to check the number of people, the amount that it corresponded with the OLE. We were all, I think, taken aback when we started to hear persons requesting to know whether persons voted or not. That was clearly not part of the order. So we were all taken back by that. And we had instances whereby over 120 names were called out of a poll from one list, with only 3 or 4 persons being ticked. And I think it got rather more comical for us when our very own legal counsel, AmCham's legal counsel, and our vice president and one of the eminent lawyers in Guyana, Mr. Devendra Kissoon, his serial number was called out as somebody who voted but he was not in the country. I could attest that Mr. Kissoon was in the country, that Mr. Kissoon and I did go out and we visited polling station on that day. So at that point, we had concrete evidence as a chamber that something is amiss here. And this is basically a shot in the dark. And apart from the fact that it deviated from the order, which was the recount of ballots, we kind of recognize as well, and I saw that CARICOM also mentioned it, that this looked like it's geared towards gathering evidence for an election petition. Because that is all you can do with this. The order is very clear. What has to be done and what has to be done after that.
So let me come back to you with something, both of you. And Jerry, I want you to take this first. Now, this, as we know, ladies and gentlemen, the allegations of migrant voters, the allegations that dead people voted, I want to remind you all, you had some gentleman with 40-something dead certificates on his wall. If you check Stabrook News, they debunked that, absolutely rubbished it. They had all of these lists of names of persons who were so-called migrant voters. Culture News has absolutely rubbished it. Those 2 allegations are the basis upon which APNU AFC is making a claim and calling on the chairman to annul these elections. However, Mr. Ali, you just mentioned Mr. Dave Kisoon's case. Has Mr. Kisoon written to the GCOM chairman to complain or raise this issue at her level? And Capt.Gerry Gouveia, this afternoon, today's evening, Mr. Vincent Alexander held on to the notion of migrant voters and dead people voting, and he has said to the press that this election will not be declared. He believes there will be a pronouncement. So, and he is holding on that the pronouncement is possible because nobody has questioned legitimately the source of information from the Commissioner of Police or from the Registrar of Births and Deaths. So, Mr. Ali, you want to go first? Has Mr. Dave Kisoon or has anybody you know gone the legitimate route?
Sure. Well, I don't know if writing to Justice Singh is a legitimate route, Yog. I don't think that, I'm not aware that Mr. Devendra Kisoon has written to the chair to say that he's here and he's alive and he voted. Notwithstanding that, I don't think there was any need for him to do so. Justice Singh is one of the most eminent judicial officer that this country has produced. And I will invite everyone to read her judgment in the elections petition case, which was filed in the Esther Pereira case, and to see how well informed she is of the law and her judgment in that law. Justice Singh, and I stand by the comments that she made. Those who assert, they must prove.
But Mr. Ali, hold on. Let me push back at you on this. Look, at the end of the day, the commission is not only the chairman. The commission made up of 3 commissioners from either side and the chairman. There are 7 of them. Alexander has been, to his credit, the man has been public over 2 weeks now. He has even been in room 592 saying that he doesn't read newspaper and GCOM cannot rely on the newspaper, and that people or persons need to present themselves to the police to prove that they're alive or to prove they were in the country. And in fact, Mr. Gildarie had 2 APNO AFC agents in his elections watch who said that we were all talking trash, that if there is such a person who is alive or who is in the country, they need to go to the police. It's ridiculous. But sir, the commission, not the chairman alone, the commission needs to be convinced, isn't it so? Because you're going to have a split right down the middle.
I respectfully disagree with you here. And
okay.
We cannot go by hearsay, and we cannot go by, anybody can write a letter. Anybody can accuse or to say anything. These are matters that have to be proven in a court of law. That is what the legal system says. That is the process that we have to follow. And we know that. I could put up today 40 certificates on my wall. It doesn't mean anything. If you make an accusation, and an accusation as important as this, which is tantamount to fraud, there is a legal process that has to be followed and has to be, and the court is the institution that has to deal with that. Even the police commissioner have to call those persons. He have to call Mr. Devendra Kisoon, and he have to say to Mr. Devendra Kisoon, I'm being told you are out of the country, or my records show Mr. Devendra Kisoon is here. He can identify himself. He has evidence that he has been here. You cannot use something that is just hearsay. And as I said, and I keep going back to the point, I have every confidence in Justice Singh. And if you read the Esther Pereira case, she was very clear about the standard of proof and the burden of proof and the legal mechanisms that have to be followed in order for you to say an illegality was committed and somebody committed an illegality.
Correct.
So all of this is just chattering, it's just talking. It may just be political soundbites and political propaganda. But the courts is where all of these matters will be settled. It can be settled on this program or by the Secretariat or in a GCOM meeting. The courts.
So you're saying, if I may, Mr. Ali, tomorrow, what is happening, the contemplation of that report by Mr. Lowenfield should not in any circumstance take into account the observations or anything. It should only take into account those figures for the 10 regions, the 10 districts.
Well, Leonard, I think it's only logical that will be the case. Because what do we take of Mr. Devendra Kisun's observation report? There's an observation report that is there within GCOM right now that says he was not here and somebody voted for him. That is compiled and it's in the observation reports that probably Mr. Lowenfield supplied, because he was tasked with providing a summary of that observation report.
Would you be very shocked? Would you be very shocked if the GCOM decide to take those observation report and contemplate it as part of the decision-making process tomorrow? And as on the issue of decision-making process, is there a decision-making process that should consider anything except those figures?
Well, based on our constitution, Leonard, it says very clearly what has to be considered by GCOM. That is the number of the recount. And I believe emanating from the observation report, that is for internal use and of course, as evidence for an elections petition. I believe that GCOM, the Secretariat itself need to look at the comments emanating from those observation report. They would need to, if there is no election petition, they themselves may need to go and investigate those things to see whether they were true or not, and whatever were true, that it's fixed, so that we don't go through this process again.
Are we confident that this matter could be wrapped up tomorrow, and we could have a declaration as early as tomorrow?
I think so, and I believe that's what the order said as well, that by the 16th, a declaration would be made.
Captain,
over to you.
Yeah, I was gonna make the point that that the issue of dead people voting or migrants voting, it is such an outlandish impossibility. And I keep making this point all the time, that there's no way I could walk into that polling station and vote for you, or you could go in and vote for me, or I could go and vote twice. The GCOM systems are very robust and secure. And to suggest that somehow, if that happened and you call it election fraud, if anything like that happened, it is GCOM internal systems, and GCOM on election day do not have that freedom anyway to allow a person who does not match the folio to vote. I mean, even the GCOM staff don't have that as a possibility. And so these wild acquisitions that was being bantered, and what is important is that I heard somebody say today that the CARICOM report resembles what the private sector was saying, or what AmCham is saying, or we are all saying the same thing because we are all talking the truth. We are all saying the same thing because we are talking the truth. And the truth is that the GCOM, nobody could vote for somebody else at GCOM, nobody could vote for a dead person, and nobody could vote twice. And no political party could interfere or tamper with the electoral process on election day unless, and I said it to you last night, unless that party got party agents, and those party agents are controlling that polling station, and more particularly that you get all the other party agents out of the room. So that is an impossibility, and we need to stop it.
Correct. But
it's really embarrassing.
You see, Mr. Gouveia, the rhetoric is what might just break things apart, because you have had one senior member, former advisor to a president, a man who Desmond Hoyt once called his creature. He said he saw. He said he saw somebody voted twice. Now, so you have rhetoric like that.
He's lying. He's lying.
Well, there you go. But Captain, I want you to comment on Vincent Alexander's statement this afternoon, where he said that he believes JICA will make a pronouncement. What is your opinion of that statement? And he said also, he's not looking at tomorrow, he's looking at later this week.
Well, I believe that this is in the hands of the chairman of GCOM. I think it's in the hands of the chairman of GCOM. And at this time, all the commissioners got their jobs to do. She will listen to them. And I think in the final analysis, this lady is one of the finest law officers we've ever had, officer of the court. And she certainly fully understands her mandate. I think whoever would have had any thoughts about her being the chairperson, she's probably the best suited person to be the chairperson of GCOM at this time. With all of the challenges going on, she is the one that will do this. Not Lowen Field, not Alexander, not Says Gunraj. This lady will interpret the law, and she will live by the law. And she said it. She said that she's an officer of the court. She lived all her life, and she would be an officer of the court until the day she dies, whenever that is. And so that lady is an amazing officer of the court, and we all have high expectations that she'd make the right choices, not Vincent Alexander or anyone else.
Captain, you had high expectations that the president would make the right decision.
You were taking the good captain to task there. But
I really expected. I think the president really needs to be listening now. The president really need to be listening to what the OAS said today. I think the president needs to be listening to what the Commonwealth Secretary said today. I think he certainly needs to be reading the CARICOM report. And the president needs to do the right thing. The president stands on a platform of honesty, integrity, and decency, and he needs to do that. You cannot have the OAS, the Commonwealth Secretariat, the CARICOM saying the things they're saying, and you ignore them. And you're finding another reason to ignore them. So the president really needs to be presidential. You need to be a man of honor and do the right thing.
I don't want to bring you, if I may.
I'll push back to you with this following point. Either one, you or even Mr. Gildarie wants to take up this case. It's the same Mr. President who yesterday admitted that notwithstanding all of the complaints and the cries about Mingo's declarations, he never called and looked at any of the SOPs. He too was dealt the spreadsheet.
And Yog, when I, as a taxpayer, as a person who created jobs in Guyana and worked all my life to help contribute to making Guyana a better place, like so many other Guyanese, when I see the waste of our taxpayers' dollars that went into this process, because there's no doubt in my mind that President Granger knew the result of these elections by the 4th of March. All of the political parties knew the results of these elections by the 4th of March. And they had the SOPs. These SOPs didn't change. In fact, we know now for sure that the statements of recount match the statements of poll, and APNU had those statements of poll. And they knew what the results were. They knew that they did not win these elections. And they dragged us through the courts, and they dragged us for months and months. And then they dragged us into a recount exercise at the convention center where people every day was there. And they knew what they were doing. They knew they were wasting money. They knew they were taking us down a place that we didn't need to go. And at a time when this country is suffering with the COVID-19, at the time when economically we are taking all the blows we are taking, to be doing this to Guyana, I don't know how these leaders could sleep at night, having done what they did to this country and deliberately wasted millions and millions of dollars to get an answer which we already knew that we had.
Correct. Well, Captain, let me tell you this. And I'm sure you read it, but let me share it with viewers and listeners. As you know, ladies and gentlemen, that we have stood by the side of the chairman. We have assessed, analyzed why she was reluctant to meet with the press or why she did what she did. Excuse me, but we have stood by her side, and we know that she stands on the side of law, and nobody like her. I think, as Ramesh Prasad said, the chairman is not a stranger to law, and she fully understands her mandate. But here is a comment that I want to read to you. The CARICOM Observer team has said this of the chairman. They said, quote, "As a team, we are deeply sympathetic to the plight of the chair of GCOM, who must walk a difficult road on a daily basis." Excuse me. They continued with about 4 paragraphs, and the last paragraph states as follows. "There was certainly intense psychological warfare waged on the chair, but she remained resolute and determined to respect the legal framework. The team took note of massive pressure exerted upon her from both forces, internal to the commission and external to the commission. In many respects, the chair was invariably in the position of a referee in a very intense and hostile football match, with GCOM ultimately being played like the proverbial football. If any criticism can be leveled against the chair, it may be her failure to appreciate her political resources and her reluctance to engage too much with the media." Well, we know that. The Madam Chairman has all her life been a judge, and her role has never been to engage with the press, and she has a PR officer to do that. So, Jerry, to the point you were making last night, I was very proud. Although worried at the pressure she's under, but I was very proud that the world has written these wonderful comments to speak of the Iron Lady, her wonderful characteristics, and the fact that she's looked upon for her strength, her idealism, and her knowledge of managing things there.
Yog, let me tell you this. The chairperson of GCOM, like I said to you last night, she came in and she set us on a course and she made decisions. A lot of times we were very impatient with her sometimes. We thought that she should make decisions quicker. We thought that maybe, like when we wanted live streaming, and then we didn't get live streaming, what we got audio streaming. Oh, people were angry and so on. But I'll tell you, I mean, every step of the way she made the right decision. She told us she was going to do a recount, and she did it. She brought us to this point in time, and she's a woman of her word. People may banter and debate that issue, but we who have been watching and working very close with GCOM over the last couple of months, I believe that she is a person of her word, and she kept her word all these months. And she provided very, very steady leadership to GCOM. Very, very steady and focused leadership to GCOM.
And so, Yoga, if I may here, I'm not sure if you gentlemen would have paid attention to the OAS, the Organization of American States, the statement today, and this is what it had to say in the second to last paragraph. In this case, the results published in the report of the Chief Elections Officer himself make it clear that the opposition PPPC has won the favor of the majority of Guyana's eligible voters. Their will must be respected. The OS calls on the current administration of Guyana to begin the process of transition, which will allow the legitimately elected government to take its place. It is very straight up, straight in its language. And so I want to ask you as observers whether you would be so brave enough to come out, and I can ask you separately to answer whether you would be brave enough to come out and say the same thing.
You don't have to be brave when you're talking the truth. You don't have to be brave when you're talking the facts. And what the OAS stated in that report is the facts. The will of the Guyanese people have spoken. And the will of the Guyanese people have chosen the PPP for the next government of Guyana. And what we are going through here is the formalities of getting it done. And so the OAS is very strong. And I think Yog, I want to say to you something I said last night. If people believe that Guyana could live without its bilateral and multilateral partners to help us in our financial development strategies in terms of our defense and security strategies, we cannot survive by ourselves. We cannot survive by ourselves without CARICOM, without the OAS, without the Commonwealth. It is an extremely important component of our country's existence to be a member of CARICOM, to be a member of the OAS, to be a member of the Commonwealth. And all of these organizations are speaking with one voice, and saying to President Granger, the time is up. The time is up. Let's get, we have dragged this out way past the bedtime. And we need to get it over with. We need to move Guyana forward and stop this charade.
So let me ask you, gentlemen, and you too, Mr. Gildarie. You're a senior journalist in this room here. Tomorrow they are reconvening at 10. The commission meeting reconvenes at 10. Mr. Alexander has said today on radio, on TV, that he's asserting that something may happen later this week, not tomorrow. Gentlemen, supposing the APNU AFC commissioners or the PPPC commissioners do not turn up to the meeting tomorrow, what then?
Good question. Well, let me see if I could put a little in perspective. There were two interviews that I saw this afternoon in front of the GCOM headquarters there. One was with Commissioner Says Gunraj, and he didn't have much to say. He says he have a preference to have more words tomorrow. Commissioner Vincent Alexander said that probably hinted at later this week here. I am going to be, I think because there's no order that says that they could do anything beyond tomorrow, and having heard what Gerry would have said, and it's my belief also, especially with the pressure that's coming from all the statements, from CARICOM, the OS, and everybody, it's going to be hard-pressed for a judge who has been sitting or overseeing an elections case years back to do an extension when the Guyanese people patience is running real thin at this point in time.
But Leonard, she is not the commission. She's the chairman of the commission.
But if you say if APNU the coalition commissioners are not there, then I think it's going to be a walkover for the three commissioners who's going to vote in a particular way, and then there's going to be a motion tabled, I believe, and I don't think that you would need a chairman to vote at that point in time. That's how I see it. And it's going to be
based on the legal advice that I've just garnered, is that if they're absent tomorrow, the chairman may not be able to proceed with a meeting, but she can reconvene a meeting, and if they're absent today at the second time, they will just proceed with or without those who are not there. Captain, any comment from you, and Mr. Ali, any comment from you on that? You're muted, Captain.
I was saying if Zulfikar could take that.
Okay.
I mean, that's a legal question, and I really don't believe that the commissioners will stay away. I think they will. I think they're obviously on a strategy to try and let their opinion known, and maybe even try to, which is what has been happening all the time. They've been trying to delay the process for whatever reason. I mean, you could run from this, but you can't hide from this. You know, this is like tomorrow.
But Captain, we're talking 105 days that people have been running to where, I don't know. Who's to stop them running?
Yeah. I know. I am basically coming from a perspective of respect for the process, respect for where we are now. But certainly people could do outlandish things that will be completely unpredictable by a person like me, who's really trying to live in a country where the rule of law and democracy and respect for people's civil rights and human rights is the order of the day. But if we have leaders who will decide to do extraordinary things outside of that ambit, then I can't predict that, you know.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Ali, any comment from you on that?
Yeah, your legal advice was on point. Our laws do make provisions for commissioners not turning up to meetings. So that is correct. So one way or the other, we will have a decision and a result on this. And I want to say that it's very unfortunate as well that we are in the position that we are in. I believe now is the time that we put this behind us. There are some major issues that has to be dealt with, that have to be investigated, and have to be fixed when it comes to our electoral system in Guyana. But we need to move past this. Thankfully, COVID has not damaged us as much as it has done a lot of other countries. But that's just knocking on wood. But we need a government in place. We need to take care of the COVID crisis. There are many people out there they have not had jobs for maybe a month, 2 months now. We need to look after them, and a government needs to be in place to do that. We have our international partners. Guyana is part of many treaties and conventions that deals with human rights, democratic rule and democracy. We cannot turn our backs on those. And in the century that we're living in, no one will respect us for that. So we need to think about our country, the beautiful people that are in our country. We need to get business back on stream, and we need to move forward as a country. And I think the vast majority of Guyanese are ready for this. They're tired of this process. We have exhausted every single avenue, legal and otherwise. And I think we have reached a point where we have credible results, and we're going to have a declaration, we're going to have a government installed, and we're going to go back to the drawing board, and we're going to work together. And I could tell you that, and I believe you experience the same thing. When you go out on the road there, you don't know that there are frictions and there are tensions or anything like that. Everyone smiles with you, they laugh at you, they share with you. If you have a problem on the road, they will stop and they will help you, because that's who Guyanese are.
Correct.
So as leaders in our society, and especially those political leaders, it is time to put this behind us, and it is time to embrace our people and work together. Losing an election does not mean you are locked away from the process. You played the most important part in Parliament, in the National Assembly. And that is something many Guyanese strive to be in, to be part of that process. So there's nothing wrong with losing an election, and no one should feel bad about it.
Thank you. And let me just reiterate this point, ladies and gentlemen. We are cognizant that APNO AFC would have raised many assertions, they have raised many, not irregularities, but allegations of irregularities that have not been proved. Let's ensure we have the right words. There are no irregularities that have been proved. It's allegations, it's assertions of irregularities. So I just want to clear that up. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to the lines for about 10 minutes. If you're calling in, please keep your call very short, to the point, ask your question, and we will answer your question offline but on air. Let me also comment, Mr. Gildarie. You mentioned just now that Mr. Says Gunraj, he did speak briefly with the press. I must tell you something, and this is in no way praise to Mr. Gunraj, but that gentleman acted very, very maturely. He showed astuteness, maturity this afternoon when he made no comment to the press. If the process is ongoing, anything you say will now just drive a lot of discussions which you don't want. And so I think, he said what he had to say. The commission is still to look and review the CARICOM report, I believe. But that, I believe, was well done by Mr. Gunraj. Well played.
Yes, thank you very much there, Yog. And of course, it is very sensitive times, and we did take note of that. And so, as Mr. Dr. Yog Mahadeo would have said, we are going to open our lines 226-7453, 226-7453. Of course, you could call us on WhatsApp us on 6222222. Make it short and sweet, and we're going to answer off here. And the issue that we're discussing tonight is elections 2020. What would have transpired today, and of course, anything pertaining to election. We have with us here Capt.Gerry Gouveia and Mr. Zulfikar Ali, both of the private sector, and of course, they would have been observers in the elections, during the elections, and during the recount that would have followed after that. Yog,
So in the meantime, the calls are coming in. Captain and Mr. Ali, here is what. The CARICOM Observer team has also said, quote, a political audit of GCOM, both the commission and administrative arm, is urgently warranted. Your comments, gentlemen.
I think we all agree that the time for reform of GCOM and the Carter Price formula for the management of GCOM needed to be reviewed. And I think they're right. It's something that the new administration will have to, and this is not just about the government, certainly it's about all the stakeholders. They need to get together, and we need to sit down together and construct a new GCOM. We need to construct a new GCOM.
Okay.
But under the circumstances, the rules and regulations that we now have, that we now operated on, have produced a result, and the time is up. The time is up. We are just, in fact, we are going from day to day and just stifling the country. We're stifling the country. We need to stop it.
I think there's a caller online. Yes. Good evening, caller. You're on the air. Yes. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good night. Let me walk you on the air. I want to wrap them out for my family.
Yes, go ahead. Could you speak up, please? Yes.
Hello.
Yes, hello. You're on the air. Go ahead. Go ahead. Make a point.
Yes. I wrap them out for my family. Please,
Okay.
We now hear you very clearly.
We get the emotions. We get the emotions there, Leonard. Thank you, caller.
Thank you.
We certainly get your emotions.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you. And Zulfi,
yes. I
want to read this part and ask for your comment. Meanwhile, another caller is coming in. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very important paragraph in the CARICOM Observer Team report. And let me say, before I read that, let me answer Mr. Sanjeev Dattadin. Unfortunately, has serious communication issues, and so he's not able to join us. Our apologies for that, but we'll certainly reschedule that discussion for another night. But listen to this. Zulfi, listen to this. The team notes that there were some irregularities at the 2020 elections, which were revealed through the very transparent national recount, but none of these irregularities and shortcomings were sufficient or substantial cause to call the 2020 results into question. I think that is plain. It doesn't even need a comment, right?
Absolutely.
It's what it is.
I mean, in every election, and if you look at the standard for every election all over the world, there will be some degree of irregularities, but it's normally kept within maybe 1 to 3% or 5% range. So naturally, those things will happen at elections. You're not going to find all of the POs doing what they're supposed to do, or all of the district officers doing what they were supposed to do. So in the absence of them not doing what they were supposed to do or mandated to do, those things will fall in the category of irregularities. But as CARICOM rightly said, it's not sufficient enough in any way, not even a small margin, to set aside the results of this recount.
Correct. Correct. And to let the viewers and listeners know, there's a very, very big difference between an irregularity and a fraud. Let us make sure we don't use those interchangeably.
Well,
because
I can make
things
a sentence for that. There's no irregularity but fraud. But there's another caller online. Yes, good evening, caller. You on the air? Yes, good evening, caller. You on the air? Hello? Got it. 226-7453. Please do not hold up the line. Many people are trying to get through. 226-7453. And you could also WhatsApp us on 6222222. Back to you, Yog. In the meantime, another call is coming.
Yes. So back to the question of irregularity versus fraud. The intent. Fraud has an intent, and somebody has to benefit from it. An irregularity may happen without anybody thinking that something will happen. An irregularity may be something that you didn't plan for. It's not within the usual run-of-the-mill policies that we'll be making. Am I right, Mr. Ali?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct, Yo. And so we need to be very careful when we speak about irregularities and when we speak about fraud. Those are not words that you can use very loosely. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to educate everyone, and everyone needs to be educated about that as well, because politicians will use that to their benefit.
Correct. And the unlawful acts and omissions. Thank you, my colleague. Mr. Prasad has sent this comment in. The unlawful acts and omissions is exactly what the statutes speak of to be in the exclusive domain of the courts.
To call it fraud is reckless and irresponsible. To taint our electoral process, where Guyanese went out that day in long lines and voted, an attempt to disenfranchise large numbers of Guyanese. I want to urge people, though, read the CARICOM report. We invited them in. We invited them into Guyana. We asked them to validate and to give their opinion, and they did. And they did. And we have no choice. We have to now take that advice into consideration and make the right decision and move on.
Correct. And ladies and gentlemen, the CARICOM Observer report is available online. You can check the numerous sources that are there and ensure that the copy you get is legitimate, because I'm sure that by tomorrow morning, a lot of persons are going to bastardize the report and make fake representations of it, just like how they did with the death certificates, Leonard.
Yes, thank you very much. And let me just read a quick text here before you go to the lines again. The people who's responsible for that, we need to know that Guyanese life matters. We can't breathe. There's a caller online. Good evening, caller. Good evening, caller. You on the air?
Good night.
Good night, sir.
Okay. Good night to the panel, Mr. Yog, Capt.Gerry, and Mr. Ali.
Yes.
I got a quick question. It won't be too long. But, I have grown to disbelieve whatever APNU has said over the years, so to speak. Not only during this period, and that leads me to think that when we have one side of the country, almost over 50% of the country, are honest, law-abiding citizens, dealing with another set, meaning APNU only, that are bent on disregarding the law all the time, continuously. What can we do? How do we fight something like this? That's a question. And then,
can I just quickly say to you that I don't believe that all of the APNU supporters are dishonest people. And I just want to say that to you. I think you may have people who are loyal to APNU, and they're not necessarily dishonest, but they're loyal to the cause of the party, and they're blinded to sometimes what the truth is. But go ahead.
Well, that's a good way of putting it as well. But I have a question. Now, we're all hoping for a declaration tomorrow, the 16th, as gazetted. And I also heard the president made a comment of a possibility of state of emergency. Now, can he declare, judging from what they have been doing all along, do you think it's a possibility that he can declare a state of emergency before a declaration tomorrow?
Well, okay, that's your question. We can answer the question offline. Thank you so much. Thank you for calling in. And let me just say this, that, a state of emergency, basically, it relates to running a country when everything else fails. But that doesn't stop, and it wouldn't restrict GCOM from continuing to do its work. If GCOM has to issue a declaration, it will still proceed to give that declaration. I mean, don't forget, ladies, we have a kind of emergency, COVID-19 created a special ordinance, created a partial lockdown on the country. So a lot of things are going on, but I certainly would like to be on the positive side and say, regardless of the games that might still continue to be played, I certainly look forward to D-Day, which is tomorrow, at the maximum, probably tomorrow evening, next day, but we are certainly near to getting that declaration. Captain.
Your comment to the issue with a state of emergency, the government will need, any government will need, or any person that is calling a state of emergency will need to have the cooperation of the other political parties. And especially in this case, the PPP, and the PPP have made it very clear that they are not going to participate in any kind of strategy like that. And so I think we just need to get on with it. This is not this delay tactic that we are doing and trying to keep dragging the country along this path in no man's land and uncertainty, while we destroy the economy and we destroy people's lives because we're not focusing on the strategy. And let me give an example of what we're not doing. We had a rescue flight, or a flight to bring back home Guyanese. Caribbean Lines had the plane all ready and to go, and then a lot of the people were so anxious to come home at the last minute, the flight was canceled. Now I'm hearing Caribbean Lines is saying that they didn't get the approved list of the passengers from the government of Guyana.
Wow.
And these are people that are living on the pavement. These are people who are living in train stations because they run out of money. And somehow, because maybe we're so distracted in trying to survive day to day here in this crazy environment, we have neglected to give Caribbean Airlines that manifest.
Well,
and
Captain,
that flight is cancelled.
Captain, I know you're trying to be a diplomat here, sir. I have been a little bit more frank than you in this case. I don't think it's like what you say. Look, a group of politicians was taken and put to run COVID task force. That by itself is very disrespectful to this country. And that group of politicians, they're more interested in these elections and what's happening with the recount and calling people names and saying all kind of things instead of doing what the ordinance asks of them to do. That is focus on the national health crisis. So no wonder our people are suffering, Captain. That's my comment. I believe that there is more to it than meets the eye.
Absolutely. And so I think we could squeeze in a couple more calls, Yog.
Yes.
Yes. So there's a caller in line. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening to the panel.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes. Good afternoon. Yes, one thing I wanted to say that when they said, of course, we'll have a new government, but of course you have, like that said, 49% of the other side of the party. Now, when it says the president swear to everybody, what the president needs to do, go into the less fortunate community, show them that you're there for everybody, and then the people will see by action, not saying you're there for everybody. Go in places like the stronghold. I not normally go into various villages where I see a lot of people live below poverty. Let the president go in and let the world see that he's there for the people, and maybe then we're able to get some good in this country. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Back to you, Yog.
Well, let me say this to that caller. Thank you. That's an interesting point you made here. But let me say this, and this is not in defense. This is fact. Mr. Gouveia, he has been head of the private sector for many years, and I'm sure he is going to speak about it. But ladies and gentlemen, hear this. There are certain municipalities, there are certain regions that the government allocates full budgetary allocation to them. But they don't want the government to look good, so they prefer to return the money to the central funds rather than spend it for the people's benefit. You see the kind of government we have in this country. The president cannot and should not go to the regions and do everything. That's why you have a regional democratic, the system set up that way. But what's been happening is that when the regions are sending back the money to central government, the people don't know and they feel that the government has a problem or the government is not doing it. It has happened. And Captain, I don't know if you want to comment, but this is part of, unfortunately, part of Guyana's history. We are so politically maligned that politics takes place over people's poverty levels.
Yes.
Yes.
You made the point.
Thank you very much. Could we squeeze in another call? One more call. Yes.
One more.
Good evening, caller. You in the air.
Hi. Good night. How are you?
Good night, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Gouveia, good night to you too, and Leonard also.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. This scenario that the PNC is going on with is no good. I mean, you have all these little islands in the Caribbean. 6 o'clock, you close the polling stations, okay? By 8 o'clock, you have all the results in, okay? And I'm a Guyanese living in St. Lucia. I was Sir John advisor, so it's Alan Shasta now, okay? In 2006, I was, well, in St. Lucia, they have constituencies, right? You have regions in Guyana. I was a constituent manager for the United Workers' Party, which is Sir John Party, all right? And at the end of voting, by 7, 8 o'clock, I had all the results for the constituency from each polling station in my hand. So why Guyana can't do it that way? Yeah?
Okay.
We could do it, and we did it. We could do it, guys. I mean, our electoral system was very efficient. And we had the SOPs, which was the regional numbers, in the returning officer's hands by midnight that night. Because, of course, Guyana is a huge country. And we could definitely, we did it. If all we need, just to make a point, that when people talk about we want to change constitution, what we really need is men and women who respect the rule of law and respect the constitution and respect the systems. Because regardless of what constitution we have or what electoral system we change, if we have people who will keep trying to tamper with the system because of a lack of integrity, we are going to be forever in challenges. But our electoral system worked, and we could have had election results in Guyana by the next day, by 6 o'clock the next afternoon in Guyana.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other point, caller? We need to wrap up. I think the caller would have gone. Over
but
to you.
Indeed, Leonard,
Yes,
I wish to reiterate this point. Guyana, ladies and gentlemen, has one of the more superior electoral systems. It is because we have such a superior system that we were able to detect what Mingo was doing. It is because we have such a system we were able to see immediately the difference between allegations and fraud. It is because we have such a system that we expected that the politicians, the incumbent, would realize that it is so transparent and they wouldn't do it. And it is because of this good system that we are calling them out every day, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this does not go to say that we must disrespect each other, or we must curse out each other, or we must have any racist notions, or we must be nasty with anybody. We have to be tolerant. People's life is on the line. Many of the politicians are probably going to lose everything. And so be it. They need to respect the will of the electorate. But ladies and gentlemen, you and I, we need to be tolerant. We need to continue to be respectful, especially of each other. Let us not let the soup drinkers and the Kool-Aid drinkers split us up. Let them drink their Kool-Aid. We got a country to take care of. And the country, ladies and gentlemen, is not going to be run by Irfan Ali. It will be run by you and I. The people of this country must remember the ballot and the power of the ballot resides in our hands. And if Mr. Ali does not do a good job, well, we vote him out.
Correct.
But in the meantime, remember, the president and Mr. Granger, please be reminded, sir, you are the chief public servant. You are not the Lord and Master, and the next president must be reminded too. You are not the Lord and Master. You are a servant to the people of Guyana, and every piece of bread you eat and every food you eat is from the taxpayers' money in this country. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we must remind the politicians that they live off your taxes. No other way. And therefore, they must be accountable for their decisions, and please have some respect for the people of this country, Mr. Politician. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end of our program. I'm going to hand you over to Mr. Ali for his closing comments and then to Captain Gouveia. Mr. Zulfikar Ali, it's been good to have you tonight, sir. Your closing comments.
Thank you, Yog. And it's been a pleasure to be here with you and to share the experiences that AmCham have had during this election period. We need to put a lot of things behind us, like I've said earlier, and we need to, as a country, move on from this. We are a democratic country. We have democratic institutions. As a matter of fact, Articles 1 and 9 of our Constitution is deeply entrenched and speak about the powers and the rights that you spoke about and the rights that are enshrined for people to vote and to vote for their representatives, so to speak. So in wrapping up, I just want to say that we have come a far way and we need to put this behind us and we need to move on as a country. And I am hoping that GCA makes their decision tomorrow. Everyone knows what the recount numbers are and who should be declared the president of Guyana and the new government of Guyana. And we should work, all of us should work together to build our country. It's a beautiful country. We have beautiful people, very smart, very intelligent people in and out of Guyana. And we need to move forward. The election is not the end of us. And let us stick to our democratic principles and let us work with each other because we're an amazing bunch of people. And you go anywhere in the world, people always say nice things about Guyanese. And one of the things, Yog, is that I was told a couple of years back that from someone who's not a Guyanese and came to Guyana, and he said he had an amazing time in Guyana, and the people were so friendly and so hospitable, and everyone is living together. And he wanted to know how come we are that way, and we are not a tourism-dependent country, meaning we don't have our people don't go to tourism and hospitality school to learn how to treat people but we do it naturally from within ourselves. That's who we are as Guyanese. We need to put this behind us and we need to join hands and we need to move forward. Our country has great prospects ahead and we will only reap the benefits of them if we work together.
Thank you. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Zulfikar Ali, who is the president of the American Chamber of Commerce Guyana chapter. And he was also the head of the AmCham's observer mission over these recount days and the exercise itself. Capt.Gerry Gouveia, sir, I know we have asked you and we have been on your bones to be here a second night in a row, sir. We certainly look into making it a perfect 3 tomorrow if there is a declaration. But, Captain, your closing comments.
Democracy is such an important component of our life. The freedom of the human spirit. And people who believe that Guyanese take democracy for granted should have seen the resilience and the determination and the diligence of the young people who guard those ballot boxes, who came to that convention center every day, who were part of our observer team, 600 or 700 people that were deployed all over this country. And so democracy is very, very important. Like the US ambassador said, Sarah, she said that it's an exclusive club of nations and there are conditionalities to be part of that club. And we all got to keep holding our politicians' feet to the fire when it comes to the preservation and protection of democracy. And so this has always been about democracy. This has not been about anything else other than the protection and preservation of our democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain. And my co-host, Mr. Leonard Gildarie. Sir, what do you have in train for us tomorrow, 1:30 at the Elections Watch?
You're asking a very difficult question. Who knows? Let's see. Tomorrow is going to be a very critical day again. Yoga, we expect a lot of things. You have thrown a spanner into the works, as the speaker, with regards to what happens if a couple of commissioners decided not to turn up and there's no quorum. Well, let's see, tomorrow 1:30, tune into Kaicho Radio, and we are going to be examining that and see what plays out from the GCA meeting tomorrow. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gildarie. And ladies and gentlemen, let me just say this to you all. Tomorrow, we certainly will continue Elections Watch. Tomorrow night, we're going to have a Room 592 special again. We are looking ahead. Everybody's on watch for the declaration. We are aware that there are so many possibilities. Tomorrow, the commissioners could walk out of the meeting. What will happen then? So we know there are so many things going to come, but let's remain positive. Let's hope that Madam Chairman, God bless her. We pray for her continued good health, and that decision and declaration will be made tomorrow so that we could, like Mr. Zulfikar Ali and Mr. Capt.Gerry Gouveia said, we could put all of this behind us and face a brand new day, a brand new future, and put all of these dark days behind us. Ladies and gentlemen, it's good to have you once again in Room 592. If you can, wherever you are, please say a prayer for this beautiful country of ours. God bless you. God bless our beautiful country, Guyana. Be safe. Bye-bye now.